Welcome everyone to the Facebook event brought to you by AdoptUSKids. I'm so happy to be here again. We had a wonderful time discussing adoption and foster care and how we can make new families from foster care to adoption. And I'm so happy to have been invited back. We have with us today Kathy Ledesma, who is the National Project Director for AdoptUSKids, and we have a family who's with us, Raenell Crenshaw and her son Dante. We are actually launching today a PSA that talks about parenting and what is a perfect parent, what takes a perfect parent, and you might be surprised at what some of the answers might be. But you're going to kick this off, aren't you, Kathy, by telling us what does it take to be a perfect parent?
Well, as our new ad campaign just launched today, you don't have to be perfect. Now, that's a theme that we've used for many years, but this year we kind of kicked it up a notch and said that you don't have to know it all to be the perfect parent for a teenager.
I absolutely agree with that, having had some teenagers in my life. And we have with us a parent of a teenager.
Raenell is with us from Illinois, and her son, Keonte, and they have a very interesting adoption story.
Why don't you tell us your adoption story?
Our adoption story started about 10 years ago. My husband and I, we were on the verge of actually becoming empty nesters, and my husband had this bright idea that we needed to do something different. I, on the other hand, thought that we needed to travel and just have a little bit of fun. And it was like, well, I think our mission is bigger than that, and I believe that we need to adopt or do some fostering because we need to give back to our community. So I kind of reached out to the local agency in our community, and that's how our story actually began. But before that, prior to that, about 7 years prior to that, we were the legal guardians of a family of three, a sibling group whose mother had passed away.
Well, Keonte, there's always another side to every story. Tell us about what happened with you.
Well, I came to the Crenshaws during a respite. I came to them for 3 days. And when I got there, I just felt the love from brothers because I never had boys in my family. I was always around girls. I had 4 sisters. So when I got there, I just enjoyed the love and, the nurture. And it was things that I can do with boys that I couldn't do with females. I can go out, play basketball, talk to them, get to know how a guy works, and things like that. So when it was time for me to go back to my original foster home, I didn't want to go. I was crying, and I was telling them that I wanted to stay there. Can you please take me back? Can you ask them? And 2 weeks later after that, they came to me and told me I would be staying with the Crenshaws. So I was just so happy.
Wow. I want to remind everyone that they should post questions because we're going to be taking your questions. But I have a whole lot of questions I want to ask myself. I want to go back to something that you said, Raenell, about wanting to give back. I think a lot of people go into the idea of adoption with the idea of giving back, but learn they're the ones who are getting all the wonderful benefits of being a parent again. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when we went into fostering, we actually thought about just fostering. And the first group of kids we came in, it was a sibling group, and they became so connected with us. There was just no way we could just give them back. They had to become a part of our family, and so every child that pretty much came into our door, we wind up adopting them or they stayed with us because it's just, you get so connected, and they're just like your birth children. It's your family, and so you just can't up and relocate them, and so that's how our story worked, and it's just unique. It's something special about the children that come into your home.
So you had adopted before?
We were legal guardians before. We had not adopted before, but we were legal guardians of a sibling group of 3. And they're still with us today, and they're 30, 29, and 24.
Do you think that for a lot of parents or prospective adoptive parents that the fear of adoption, the permanence of that scares them and keeps them from moving forward, even if they've had a foster child who they love?
I think they do because there's so many stigmas on, adopted children. But they're your children. Whether you birth them in your heart or birth them in your womb, they're your children. And so people just have to get over, whether they're adopted, if you're raising them however you have them, they're your children. And they just want to be loved like everybody else.
I'm always full of questions because I want to know the whole story. But I want to come to you and tell me, if you don't mind sharing, how long were you in the foster care system before you were adopted?
Well, I think I was in the foster care system for at least 5 or 6 years before I was adopted by them. Yeah.
Were you afraid that you'd never have a permanent family?
Yes, because before I moved with the Crenshaws, I was moving from home to home, and it was like I was tired of moving from home to home, and I didn't really have a settled family to, get to know good and get to do stuff with. So.
Well, I want to remind people that you can ask questions of anybody on the panel. If you'd like to just post a question, we will take that question. But I also want to ask, how many families are there out there? How many children, let's start with that,
Sure.
who are waiting throughout the United States for adoption?
Well, right now there are more than 428,000 in foster care, and of those, about 112,000 are waiting to be adopted. And about 20% of those are older teens, and that's really our focus this year, to recruit families. It's relatively easy to recruit families to adopt very young children, but it's much more challenging to recruit families for older youth.
Are there age restrictions or other restrictions to families who might be considering it, who think, well, maybe I'm too old or too young?
Mm-hmm. Well, just like everything in our world, the field has evolved, and there's really not an absolute age restriction on adopting. What you have to be able to demonstrate is that you're going to be around long enough to raise the children that are placed with you into adulthood, and that's never a certainty, but that's really the plan. You don't have to have a whole lot of money because it doesn't cost anything to adopt children from foster care. You don't even have to live in a house. You can live in an apartment or a condo. You just have to have a place for that child to live in your family. So I don't know what happened with you, Keonte, if you ended up sharing a room with your brothers.
Yeah,
that would be like a typical thing to have happen,
Right.
to fully integrate into a family.
Again, please post your questions if you have any. I've met so many children over the years. For 35 years, I've been interviewing kids who are in the foster care system to try to help find homes for them all around the Washington, D.C. area. And they are just, all have different stories, but all have shared with me, once I've earned their trust, that they'd like to have a family, that they really would like to, and how they've so often thought that nobody wants them because nobody has come forward, even after they had been featured in stories or at parties. Did you ever go to a party where you met people who were thinking about adoption?
I think I went to a Christmas party one time it was an adoption party, I think. So it was a Christmas party.
Those are pretty common, aren't they, around the country?
Yeah, they are pretty common, and some of them are handled like speed dating, and others are just more casual, where people are kind of checking each other out. That is a good way to get to know kids. Another really good way is to go to our website, AdoptUSKids.org. About 5,000 of the children and youth who are waiting are photo listed there at any given time, and mostly our photo listing website, not every child has to be photo listed on there. These are the kids that we have special challenges around placing. So they might be a sibling group of 3 or 4, which presents a challenge. Or they might be a 17-year-old that doesn't have any extended family, doesn't have a foster parent who's able to adopt them, and we really want to get them in a family before they turn 18.
We have a question that's just come in, and it's for you, Raenell.
Okay.
I want to know, what was the most rewarding thing for you about adopting Dante?
Well, he's a lot of fun. And just knowing that we were able to give him a home, knowing that he was one of the children, he wanted to be with us, and that we wanted him to be with us, and just knowing that we were able to make him feel comfortable, that he didn't have to worry about being moved from our home to go somewhere else, that he had a permanent and a forever home.
Fantastic. We have a question for you,
great,
Kathy.
great.
Someone wants to know, why does it take so long to get a home study done and get the results back?
Right. So that is such a good question. The primary responsibility of the child welfare system is to keep children safe. Safety is paramount. So when a child has had to leave his or her own family because of the safety was violated in some way, we want to make sure that the next family or the permanent family that that child moves to not only is a safe place and a permanent place, but has the resources in their family, in their extended family, and in their community to wrap around the family to make that a successful placement. And that takes time to do. So a fingerprint check, that takes a little bit of time to do. Checking with references, that takes a little bit of time. But the biggest thing is the preparation. So it's usually 24 to 30 hours of preparation where you learn about what the children in foster care have experienced and the effects of trauma and how that might play out once a child is in your home.
Raenell, you have been giving respite care to families who are foster families and who may need to take a vacation or have some reason that they need someone to help out. So that meant that you would take a child or a sibling group for how long?
It just depends. It could be anywhere from a few days to a week or two.
So having had that experience, did you have to do any special, did you have to have an investigation that we just talked about in order to adopt?
Well, once we signed up through the prior class, which is the training, it's 27 hours of training in Illinois. And so once you go through the classes, during the class process, it's doing the fingerprinting and your background check, the references and everything that Kathy talked about. So once you're complete with that, everything that you need is already done. So to do respite, we didn't have to do anything because we were already licensed.
I suspect a lot of people are afraid of what that entails, that kind of home study, and I guess they want to know everything about you, where you came from, where you grew up, something about your parents. Do they go and talk to friends too, Kathy? Maybe you can answer that.
Yes. A very common practice is to ask the family themselves for some references so the family can choose. But then we also do checks with medical folks, maybe with the pastor of the church, and with adult children who are grown and out of the family who can really give a different perspective on their parents' capacity to continue parenting.
Okay, we have another question for you, Kathy. It's how long does that home study process take? And then, of course, how long do people usually have to wait after the process is finished?
So what we tell people when they contact us is that they can expect from start to finish that first contact or the first orientation until they have a child placed, that's going to take you about as long as it would take to think, oh, we want to have a baby, and how long it takes to conceive that baby and deliver that baby and bring the baby home. So 10 months, 11 months it could take. However, families who are willing to both foster and adopt, those families generally are fast-tracked. So it's not a backdoor way in, but I think for years people thought it was the backdoor way into adoption. But being co-certified or co-approved for those two things really helps to speed up the process.
That does make a big difference, doesn't it?
It does.
So what about when you were fostering? You weren't fostering, though. You never did foster children, right?
We fostered the first group of kids that came into our home. They were just through legal guardianship, but we went through the PRIDE class, which is required in Illinois to become a foster family. So we did foster. We actually fostered Keonte for 3 years before he was adopted, and 3 other children.
So then it was the same process that it would take. So even after you had been giving respite care, you had to take the foster care lessons?
I didn't do respite until after we had actually gone through all the classes, and we had foster kids in our home before we actually did respite.
So how many children have you fostered in all?
9 or 10.
Have you met any of them?
Yes.
He lived with all of them.
Yeah, I lived with all of them.
Oh, you've lived with all of them. How long have you been with your mom?
Is it going on 8 or 7?
So
8
you
or 7
probably
years.
can't even remember when you were there,
No,
right? Have you been pushing her to adopt more?
No.
You like being the only child, huh?
Well, I got a lot of brothers and stuff, so they're still around, but I like where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Now, did you have children before?
I had two birth sons.
And where are they now?
One lives at home with me, and one lives in Indianapolis. Solomon lives in Indy, and Spencer lives in Danville.
And how do they feel about having this brother? I don't have to ask that question.
They love him, and that's what made our process so easy, because our sons were so open to us taking other children in. And that's how we got the first family, because of our sons. It was actually their friends whose mother was passing.
They were five sons.
No, it was first two children, two boys that we
see.
birthed. And then we took on our son's friends, whose the mother was passing. And we took the sibling group of 3 on. And then a few years later, when all the kids were the younger two were 17, then we took the pride class and became foster parent. But all of our children were just open to receiving other children to the home.
Oh, that's wonderful. And there's a question that has just come in for you, Raenell.
Okay.
What can you do to make the process a little easier and faster?
Go through the classes, get your paperwork done, give your references. Just do the things that they ask. Our home study went pretty fast. We worked with the agency and tried to provide everything that they needed, so it made the process go pretty fast.
And let me ask you, Dante, do you think that kids actually are willing to go to their counselors or to their guardians ad litem or their lawyers or whoever works with them? Did you have those people in your life at one time?
Well, I think I had a caseworker.
You had a caseworker.
Yes.
Were you willing to share with the caseworker that you wanted to be adopted?
Yes, for me it was way easier to go to my caseworker instead of the people that was fostering me at the time. It was easier to go talk to her, so to see what she was thinking and see how she wanted everything to be. So it was easy for me to talk to her and explain to her why I want to be adopted, or why I think I need a family, or why it was important to have a family.
And what sort of things did the caseworker do to try to help that happen?
Before I came with the Crenshaws, I had a man caseworker, so he was telling me that he went to go talk to him. So that was one of the steps. He went to go talk to him for me. He was looking into talking to the people that was fostering me at the time to talk to him and stuff. So.
Well, before you met the Crenshaws, and you knew that you wanted to be adopted then, right?
Yes.
So did they do anything to try to help you find families that might be interested in adopting you?
Not at that time, no.
I see. What do you think? What do you think should be done about that?
I
mean, if there are kids like you who are in foster care and who are dreaming of having a permanent family, but nobody's doing anything about it, is there something you think we ought to be doing?
I think we all just need to, come together, like the people that's older, that's been through what other people has been through. We think we need to just come together and, make a stand that we need to talk to more people and more people to come together and to bring everything together. So,
I think that's a great idea. So would you like to become a spokesperson for kids who are in the foster care system who are hoping for families like you have now?
Yes, I would.
All right, well, here you are. Here he is. If you have any questions for him, if you're listening, please post those questions, because Keonte is here to answer, and I know he has had a lot of experience, as you've had foster brothers.
Yes.
And no sisters?
Yes.
Sisters, right?
Sisters too.
Yeah, and they're all great, huh?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So please post those questions. So you've been doing this a long time, Kathy.
45 years.
Is it getting better, or do you think it's getting more difficult for kids in foster care to find families?
I think it's getting better, actually, because we're really listening to the youth voice now. I think years ago we thought, oh, this is the adult decision, we don't need to involve the youth. But no, we really need to be engaging with them, explore with them what it is that they want for their future, and remembering that that first no to adoption doesn't really always mean no. It could come from a place of being scared, of being disappointed, that if I want adoption and I don't get it, then I'm going to be disappointed and I'm not going to set myself up. So really tuning in to what the young people want in their lives. And I think that practice is getting better.
We have a question for you. I knew you were going to become the spokesperson. Someone has written in, they'd like to know, what was the hardest thing for you in adjusting to a new home?
Well, not knowing the person, not knowing the people that I was going into, not knowing the home that I was going into, not knowing why I was taken from my biological mother or not understanding at a young age what was going on.
How old were you when you were removed from your biological home?
7.
7. And no one explained to you why?
No.
Did you have anybody to ask why?
I mean, I had caseworkers that I used to ask, stuff like that, but they'll say my biological mom wasn't ready to take on 5 children because I had 4 sisters, and I was the only boy and I was the oldest. So.
Well, we have a camera person from NBC4 in Washington who has come, and he's going to join us in here. So come on in, Manal, and you can be part of this. Just stay out of the camera way. He knows how to do that. He's got a camera on his shoulder. Anyway, it's really interesting to be able to hear your perspective because, as I said, I've talked to kids for so many years who feel sometimes like they don't know who to talk to and what to do, and it's years pass by and they're missing the opportunity to have families. Is there anything we can do, Kathy, to try to speed up the process at all?
Yes. Now, in 1997, there was the Adoption and Safe Families Act that really overall has sped things up, but really not enough. It sped things up on the front end so that parents, biological parents, have shorter length of time to remediate those situations that brought the kids into care, so that we're getting kids freed for adoption quicker if we know that they're not going home. I think that the complex system, the communication between the court and the caseworker and the youth and the parents is just really the key to all of that. And I think there are many things that we can do, and there are many states that have really, really accelerated that process without going too fast, because there's a danger of going too fast.
Raenell, how long did it take for you to have your adoption approved once you began the process?
I think for Keonte, we had 2 adoptions in 6 months. So for Keonte, it was probably about 3 months once we started the paperwork. And then for the other 3, theirs was about 6 months later.
Yeah.
So things are moving a lot faster than they used to. What about teenagers? Let's talk about teenagers, and incidentally, that is what the PSA that you're going to be seeing pretty soon on television and I guess hearing on the radio as well.
Right.
Tell us about it, because it has to do with adopting a teenager. Then I have a question from you from one of our viewers who wants to know why you chose to adopt a teenager, but tell us about that.
Sure. So from the very beginning, the Ad Council, who's our partner in this, along with the Department of Health and Human Services Children's Bureau, did research about what prevents parents from coming forward, prospective parents from coming forward to adopt. And it was fear of failing a child who had already experienced many failures of adults in their lives. And so we've always taken a humorous approach to break through that fear, to say, parents aren't heroes, parents aren't perfect, and you don't have to be perfect. So we kicked that up a notch this year, and saying you don't have to know everything to be able to parent a teenager. I don't know how much you're into text talk and all those acronyms and stuff. No. That's one of the things that we look at, that you don't have to know what all those things mean. And your kids will enjoy it and they'll accept you nonetheless.
And how about that? How did you happen to decide that, okay, I want teenagers? Did you ever think of adopting a baby?
Nope. Never crossed my mind. I knew I had been a birth parent, and my husband was pastoring when our kids were young, and so we were always on the go. I did not want babies, so when we even signed up for the classes, I told them that I wanted kids 10 and higher, 10 and older. I don't have to change diapers. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to wake up through the middle of the night to give bottles. I could talk to the kids, and they could understand me, and I could understand them. So adopting teens, especially because our kids were older, it just was a better fit for us.
And I'd like to ask you, because somebody has called in and asked, what do you think foster parents can do to make a foster child, feel more comfortable in the home?
Well, I say get to know them a lot. Take them to parks near around, get to walk with them, just talk to them, just nurture them, and ask them about their past, the questions that they're comfortable with, and ask them stuff that they've been through, and let them tell them, and then maybe go on trips or something like that. Maybe go take a family trip to an hour trip or something like that, and go to a pizza place or something. Do something that's good.
Yeah,
good
sounds
overall.
great.
Yeah.
What was different, and you don't have to put down the other foster parents, but what was different that made this the right magical fit for you at the Crenshaw's house?
I'll say my brothers. That's my main key.
Oh, they were the selling point,
Yeah,
huh?
I love my brothers to death, and I think
And you
they're
knew that within days.
Yeah, it was just amazing the love that they share. It wasn't even me; it was the love that they shared for me as soon as I got there, and so that's something I never experienced before in life. So I just enjoyed it.
Oh, I've got another question for the two of you. What is your favorite bonding activity? What do you like to do?
Well, we do a lot of silly things at home, but
Yeah.
Keonte does a lot of jokes. He plays Denzel Washington. So, and then around the holidays, some of our special moments around the holidays was like the 25 days of Christmas. We would watch, set out movies, and if we did Polar Express, we had all the chocolate and all the candies and everything for the night we did Polar Express. So we did a lot of family time together, and so that was just something that helped all of us to bond.
So how old was Keonte when he came into your home for that respite experience?
He was 11.
11 years old.
Yes.
And the other boys were how old at the time?
12. One was 12, two were 17.
Do you think it made a difference that they were adopted children?
One was through guardianship, one was my birth child, and the other was a foster child.
Okay, so you had a whole mix of everything
Yes,
going
yes.
on. I see. But you did end up adopting the other
Yes.
foster child?
Yes.
So, okay, well, well, that probably made you feel really at home, huh?
Yeah.
You know, who was who, which was great. Because I think that's one of the concerns that kids often feel. I mean, children sometimes tell me they'd like to be the only child, but a lot of them say they'd like brothers and sisters. Is it very difficult to fit an adoptive child into a family that already exists? Kathy?
No, not really. And that's one of the reasons we do a home study, because we talk to the kids to find out, is this really something that you want, or are you just going along with mom and dad because that's what they want? So that's an important piece of information, and not only the kids in the home, but the ones that are already grown, and sometimes the parents of the people who want to be foster or adoptive parents. Oh.
Now, do more people look for babies? We asked you that question. That was not what you were looking for. Are more people still looking for babies as opposed to teenagers when they adopt?
Not really. I think that over the last 15 years, the message has gone out over and over and over that if you want to adopt a baby, don't come to the public child welfare system, because it's not in the business of working with birth moms to voluntarily place their children for adoption. It is there to respond to children whose safety has been compromised. And there are a lot of very young children who come that way, especially now with the opioid crisis. We have a lot of babies coming into care. But again, it takes time to try to replace them with the parents, and if that fails, then to have them adopted. And the most important thing is if you foster and you're open to adopting, that's really the best thing for the child, because they won't have to move again.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a call that just came in. Another question for you. Do you still see your birth family?
No.
And you have not seen them since you were removed from the home?
I mean, I seen my biological mom a long time ago. It was about 6 years ago at a sibling visit that me and my sisters used to do. So.
Yeah, Kathy, how difficult is it for an adoptive family to accept a child who wants to still have some sort of contact with their birth family?
I think that's one of the important things that families learn in the training, is how important that is to a child. To a baby, maybe a little less so, because they don't have a conscious memory of that family. But in Keonte's case, you lost your parents and you lost your siblings because you were separated from them. To maintain those relationships, even if it's by phone or FaceTime or texting, that's really important. It's important to all of us.
Well, Raenell, how would you have felt if he had wanted to have contact with his parents, or wanted you to help him find them, or wanted to have some sort of relationship with his birth family?
I think just depending on, how comfortable the mom was at that time, and long as it was going to be positive, it would be okay, because I know he talks to his mom now, and he has the opportunity to talk to his father. But as long as they keep it positive, it's just you don't want anything to impact the children, because of trauma that they experienced before. You don't want them to go backwards. You want them to keep moving forward. So as long as it's positive.
I'm sure that a lot of adoptive parents feel some fear that after they have bonded and this child has become theirs, sometimes even from infancy, but even from 11 years old, you don't want anything to get in the way of your relationship. Did you ever fear? Did you have any fear that could ever happen with any of the children that you have taken?
I have one now that I'm kind of working through with that process now. I'm just kind of trying to wait to pick the right time, to allow them the visits, because I don't want to keep them from, birth parents, because I'm blessed because you're here. But you wouldn't be here if you hadn't come through your birth parent. So I don't want them to grow up and have a dislike because I kept them away. But I want to know when it's the right time that it's not going to negatively impact the child.
We have a question for you, Kathy. Can you explain the difference between the foster care process of becoming a foster parent and becoming an adoptive parent?
So years ago, we said, these are different people. Foster parents are different from adoptive parents. But you know what? Safety and nurturing are things that are important to a child, whether it's for one night or for a lifetime. And so most states have really gone to a model of dual approving families, almost requiring that dual approval, because when Keonte was placed with Raenell, he had to be on a foster care basis, so they had to be approved as foster parents. The intention, perhaps, was to adopt him right out of the gate, but they had to be foster parents first. So it's no different. It really is no different. And that's one of the big transformations that has taken place in the field.
So once you have become a foster parent, do you have to say to the agency that I want to be on the track to adopt, or is that something you can decide later?
You can decide that later. Many families go into fostering with the intention of only fostering. They fall in love with the child. They can't think of that child being anyplace else, like Raenell said, and that then, it's almost like the first right of refusal, that it would be harmful to move Keonte from Raenell's home. It would be harmful, and we don't want to do that.
Keonte, there's a question that's come in for you. What advice would you give to kids in foster care or who are hoping to be adopted?
I would say communication is the best way to go, because if you don't communicate, you won't know nothing. You won't know what's going on. So communicate with your parent. You also want to be very respectful, because you got to know that you're there in their home, but they didn't have to do what they did to get you. So.
Yeah. I had an experience with a young boy. I had seen him several times over his life, from the time he was about maybe 8, and then again at maybe 11, doing the story of his wanting an adoptive family. Finally, he had moved so many times from one foster home to another. He had become so friendly with one of the kids in his junior high school, or maybe it was high school by then, that he asked his friend, "Do you think your mom, who was a single mom, would adopt me?" Do you remember this story?
Yeah.
I will never forget the story, because she was stunned. She didn't even know that he was in foster care, neither did his friend. Because, kids who are in foster care often don't share that with their friends in school. They don't want what they think is a stigma of being different. So his friend was so shocked, and he said, "Because I'm going to have to leave, they're sending me to another family." And he ended up talking to his mom, and the mother was shocked too, but she liked him, and she knew that he was a great kid, so she ended up going through all the process. She was a single mom, and adopted this friend. And he has just graduated from college last year, I heard.
And
so
what
we're
a
so
young man.
proud of him for speaking up.
Right.
So I think you're right that you should speak up and talk about it. And if you're in the foster care system and you want to be adopted, talk to your social worker or your caseworker, as you had, and make it known.
Right.
Are there classes for the social workers to know when and when not to talk to kids about adoption?
There are classes. This year's National Adoption Month webinar, we held that last week. Keonte was a featured speaker on that webinar, and we got instant feedback that the things that he said were the most important things that they heard on the webinar, and this was for professionals. So the National Adoption Month website and the AdoptUSKids website has oodles of resources on how to talk to a young person about being adopted.
Well, you know, kids are so into the technology these days.
Right.
They all have phones. You have one?
Yeah.
And a computer. And so is there anywhere kids can go if they want to find out more about adoption?
Oh,
especially
sure.
Teenagers.
Sure, you bet. They also can go to our website. They can call our professionals, 888-200-4005. They can call, and our staff is happy to engage and answer their questions. If they're not getting somewhere with their caseworker, it's not someone they can relate to, at least objectively they can get some answers.
Okay, and give
to
us
their
that
questions.
address again.
888.
Oh, this is the phone number.
Right,
Okay.
and the phone number is 888-200-4005, and then our website is adoptuskids.org.
Okay.
Great.
A question's come in for you, Raenell. Did you have a celebration on the day that he was adopted? Or what do you do, and how do you celebrate every year on that day? Is it like a birthday for you and you?
We didn't have a big celebration, but we dressed up. It was late at night, and we got a baby bottle, and we put Keonte, my husband, sat on one side of the sofa, and I was on the other side, and we had Keonte with a bottle and laying out. He's so tall, so that was his adoption picture. I think I posted a picture, said I gave birth to I don't know what child, number 10 at that time, I think. And I said how much he weighed, like 135 pounds. So we posted a picture of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. I have heard other families say, and I didn't know what they were referring to, their gotcha day.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you
Yes,
have, Kathy.
absolutely, yeah.
Is it, and they celebrate every year that that's the day that she gotcha. Which is a beautiful idea. Well, tell us more about the experience the first day he walked in the door. Did you know, was there something magical about that moment?
Well, we were planning. I worked for an agency at the time. We had a big event that weekend, and I think it was Valentine's Day weekend. So we had a big event that night, so we were kind of rushing around the house to go to the event. And at the event, Keonte became like the star of the show.
Wow.
He just was moonwalking all over.
We have to have you do that for us before the end of this hour.
Denzel Williams.
He did all the Michael Jackson with the hat, and everybody was just surprised. Like, who is this young man? I barely knew his name because, you know, in the midst of him coming, we were getting ready. The whole family was getting ready to go to the event. But the fact that he didn't want to leave, he just was like fitting in that whole weekend. You didn't know you had another extra child. So he just fit in. So when we took him back, I really didn't want to bring him back because he just wanted to be with us.
Did he tell you?
Yes.
At that time, I don't want to leave, may I stay?
Yes, he told me en route to me taking him back to the agency that he didn't want to go. And I'm like, I have to drop you back off. I can't keep you. And he was crying. He's like, but I really want to stay. And I said, but I have to drop you off. You were here for respite. And I went home and I told my husband, like, he didn't want to leave us.
And what was the first thing you did when you got back? Did you know their phone number?
At the time, no.
You couldn't call them and say, or send them a text message or anything?
So I was just hoping for the best at that point.
Well, it worked. It worked out. Kathy, there's a question that's come in for you. What's the first step a person should take if they want to try to adopt a child from foster care? How do they identify a child? Where do they go? What do they do?
There are several first steps that you could take, so lots of different ways. One really good thing to do would be to talk to somebody like Raenell, because she's walked the walk and not just talked the talk. So talking to her, asking the same questions you're asking today. Call our staff again or visit our website to find out more about it. Are all excellent ways. Also, becoming approved to foster, but say I only want to do respite, so you could get your feet wet in having the kinds of first experiences that Raenell had with Keonte.
A lot of jurisdictions do have ways of trying to reach out.
Yes.
Some cities have followed our lead and have Wednesday's Child,
Wednesday's
or they
Child.
call it something else, where they introduce kids online, and don't feel afraid to make a phone call so that you can find out, because there are children out there who are just waiting and who have been waiting a long time. We want to remind people that they will be seeing these PSAs again.
right.
Tell us what the theme is again this year.
Well, the theme is that what to expect when you're expecting a teenager. So it's a play on the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting a Baby. And the tagline for it is, you don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. In one of the 2 TV spots, it is just hilarious. Parents trying to wake up a teenage son in the morning. And they're talking as if in a blog, a live blog. And they vacuum and they put the dog on the kid, nothing. And then finally, Dad's downstairs cooking bacon, and that gets the kid out of bed and comes into the kitchen, hugs the dad, and says, "Oh, bacon."
Well,
So
people really have to know that you do not have to be
you do
perfect.
not.
And probably many parents out there whose children have already grown up, or they still have teenage kids at home, they know they're not perfect. And you don't have to be any more perfect to have an adopted child than you do with a birth child. We'd like to end by getting some advice from each of you for people who are thinking of adopting. You want to start that off, Deontay?
Yes.
Thinking of adopting a foster child, and perhaps even a teenage foster child.
Okay. I would say go for it, because you can't go wrong with adopting a kid, because everybody needs a family. Like from past experience, I needed a family, and I got one now, and just by them taking the time to adopt me and fostering me. So I'd say go for it.
And do they have great expectations for you
Yes.
growing up? What are you planning to do with your life?
Well, I'm in college right now and working. So currently, I plan on transferring to a university for athletic training and furthering in my foundation towards adopted kids, giving them hygiene bags. So I plan on furthering that a little bit more.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think you might want to adopt a foster child yourself someday?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, and how about you, Raenell?
I would just say, don't be afraid. There are so many kids out there, and you may not know, just you have the photo list, but in our case, we didn't know. We just got a phone call, and we didn't say no to the phone call. And if we had said no, we would have missed Keonte and all the other great kids we had. So we just be open. Be open and don't be afraid.
And
And
Kathy?
to that, I would add, look around. Looking at the photo listing website with 5,000 kids photo listed waiting for adoption is one place. But if you're a teacher, look around your classroom. If you're a coach, look around your team. Really look at who's out there, because with 428,000 kids in foster care, chances are they're next to you in church, they're next to you in school, they're at the supermarket, and that can be a perfect thing for a child, to not have to leave behind his neighborhood, his school, his friends, and be open to that.
And there can be nothing more perfect than a child in your home.
That's right.
To grow up and to love you and for you to love back. So we hope that all of you who are watching and are listening right now will think about that, and think about all of those thousands of kids who are waiting for that love that you can give. So I hope you'll invite me back next year. I always
Barbara,
have such
this
a good time
has been
doing
our pleasure,
this.
and I want to just give you a huge thanks, huge shout out to Subject Matter here that's hosted us, the Department of Health and Human Services, Children's Bureau, the Ad Campaign, the Ad Council, and KBS. This is a wonderful teamwork, and we are so delighted that you will do this for us.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kathy,
Yeah.
and thank you to the Crenshaws for coming all the way from Illinois to join us. We're very happy to have had a chance to talk to you as well.
Great.
So check out those PSAs, and we hope to see you again next year.